Hi, we are at the Nelson Mandela Park in Amsterdam Southeast. This was the chosen location for the Nelson Mandela Monument. First time I was here was about 3 years ago and there was nothing here, but this was chosen as the spot for the sculpture. On the base itself, we have about 7 sculptures, each of them representing an individual that belongs to this community. We came to this selection of 7 people after we did a sort of short campaign going around this community, going to churches, going to markets, going to stores and just meeting people in the streets, speaking to them about the legacy of Nelson Mandela and what that represents to them. And each of them had some kind of background to his story, and they made a selection or a nomination for somebody in the community that represents that history. So these are the people that you see in this sculpture. As a South African, Nelson Mandela is very important to us. We think of them as the father of our nation. And we also relate to him because of his sacrifices to bring democratic freedom to our people. So his time spent in prison was a time where a lot of South Africans meditated on his image, even though he was locked up and his image was banned. So I think of him as a freedom fighter, as a statesman, but also as a father. I made this idea. I wanted to transform some of his ideas into the concept of the sculpture. Of his ideas, I really liked his insistence on the idea of Ubuntu as a way of reorganizing South African society after apartheid. And this idea says that I am because you are. Basically, it affirms your humanity by affirming mine as well. So I liked that idea for this particular context of the Bijlmer, because this community, the way that it comes together, sort of relates to a lot of the kind of struggles that South Africans have been dealing with, of diversity and trying to build a cohesive society, even though people are not the same. At the bottom of the base, we have a text that's running around, which is borrowed from a quote by Nelson Mandela. And it has to do with the idea of Ubuntu. Ubuntu is an age-old South African or African philosophy, which has to do with the idea of community, or the idea that a community is made from the collective and not so much the individual. So it reads, we are human only through the humanity of others. And in South African languages, or in isiZulu, which is a South African language, this translates to umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. In my mother tongue, which is Setswana, it translates to mutu ke mutu kabatho. A human is because of others. So that's what this text that you see here is around. The blue, or the bluish-green patina that you see on the bronzes, is meant to refer to the ocean. It references the aquatic environment as a place of passage, as a place that connects different contexts, different histories. And in this context, it was making reference to the diverse community that comes from different places around the world that have some kind of connection to the colonial history of the Netherlands. But behind the sculptures, we have a different treatment. So we have a polished bronze surface that's meant to separate the back from the front and sort of give another narrative to the sculpture. In the evening, there are lights that light up when it gets dark, and they illuminate the back of these sculptures and create some kind of a optical illusion, where the glow of the light bounces off each of these sculptures and it starts to look like a photographic image. The sculptures were made in Cape Town and transported to the Netherlands for installation. And the process of making the sculptures started with a series of scans, photographic scans being done on the nominees And once we had those scans, they were then translated into foam at the foundry in Cape Town and then sculpted in wax. From that, the bronzes were produced and the patina was done, and the sculptures were ready to travel. The sculptures have been launched and there's been a good response from the community, and I think there's a sense of ownership to some degree because the sculpture represents or reflects people that belong to this community. The significance of this project to me was about the opportunity to create a representation of Nelson Mandela's legacy. I think as a South African, everybody has an idea of what Mandela means to us, but to be able to make that concrete and put that in a physical object that other people can experience is very important to me. So that's the significance, to be able to write his story into history through my perspective.